It's Way Up with Angela Yee. I'm Angela Yee, and Jasmine Brand is here with me today.
Yes, I'm here.
And now we have a best-selling author, and you're also a psychotherapist, mental strength trainer, and award-winning host of Mentally Stronger with therapist Amy Morin podcast. Thank you so much for joining us, Amy Morin.
Thank you so much for being here and letting me come to your show.
Oh, no, we love these type of conversations.
We need them.
All right, so you have a new book out, 13 Things Mentally Strong Couples Do. Now, you've done a lot of mentally strong, you have like a whole mentally strong series. And so before we even start, what makes you the expert on this? Just so people who are listening understand why you're writing these books.
Well, I started my career as a therapist, and I thought, I'm going to teach all of these skills I learned in college. But it was really when I went through my own journey. My mom died when I was 23, which was just shortly after I'd launched my career as a therapist. And then when I was 26, my husband passed away. And it was really those losses that taught me the most about mental strength. It wasn't just about the stuff I'd learned in college anymore. It really set me on my own journey to say, what makes people mentally strong? And what are the bad habits I want to give up if I want to be a strong person and come out on the other side?
Yeah, and you write about this in the book as well, just so people can know your whole history of the things that you went through to bring you here. And one thing that you did do was you went viral on social media. Can you talk about that list that you did, the 13 things mentally strong people don't do?
Yeah, my father-in-law had just been diagnosed with terminal cancer. I had gone through that series of losses. I felt like I'd just spent a whole decade grieving, and now I was faced with the terminal prognosis, and I thought, I can't stand another loss. So I sat down and I wrote myself a letter of what mentally strong people don't do. And initially I thought it was just for me, but I thought, if it's helpful to me, maybe it will help somebody else. I put it on the internet, and 50 million people read the article. One of them was a literary agent who said you should write a book. But at first, nobody knew why I wrote it. Online, it was pretty much just the list. It didn't give my backstory. So my agent said, well, if you share the backstory, maybe it would even give you more credibility when people know you didn't master this list just because you went to college and you're a therapist, but you struggled it. Yeah.
What do you think on the list, based on the list, what do you think people struggle with the most? Because it's a lot of them I'm kind of struggling with.
The one people talk about the most is don't give away your power.
Okay.
Which is really about when we blame other people, like, you ruined my day.
So that's an example of giving away your power.
Right.
Blaming other people
Okay.
Okay. It says they don't allow others to control them. They don't give someone else power over them. They don't say things like, my boss makes me feel bad. Because you do have control over your emotions and a choice in how you respond.
Okay.
You know, sometimes you can't control other people's actions, but you can control how you respond to other people's actions.
That's it, exactly. And then but sometimes we want to be like, it's their fault that I'm having a bad day, or they're making me feel bad. But taking back your power is about saying, no, I can control these things myself.
You know, 13 is an interesting number. That's Taylor Swift's lucky number.
Right.
But it's also my lucky number, so I just want to put
13 is your lucky number?
Yeah, it's my birthday, January 3rd.
Okay.
So 1, 3, 13.
Okay.
So that's always been kind of my lucky number too.
Okay.
And now so let's talk about this list first, and then let's get into the book. Some other things, they don't fear taking calculated risks, and I think the key word is calculated.
Yeah.
Right. We don't want to be impulsive and just leap because something sounds good. But on the other hand, sometimes we think, this seems scary, so it must be risky, and then we don't do it.
Right.
So it's about balancing your emotions with some logic and knowing, okay, just because this seems scary, is it really, and can I do it anyway?
That's an interesting thing too, because I always tell people, like, if you're an entrepreneur and you want to start a business, do a business plan, come up with all the information that you can have to help you lessen the chance of failure, and then take the risk. Don't just be like, I'm just going to quit everything and start a business.
That's what I did.
I wouldn't. Well, yeah, you did. It worked out.
It worked out though. But yeah,
but you got fired, kind of.
Yeah, I kind of got ultimatum. Yeah. No, but I do think it's a good idea to have a business plan and all that kind of stuff. But I feel like people sometimes use that as a excuse not to get started. I still need to do this. I still need to do that. We come up with reasons of why we're not doing it yet.
I do too. I think sometimes people assume that they're not ready yet, so they keep planning and planning and planning.
A lot of planning.
You'll plan forever,
and then they don't take action.
And that is there is a balance with that too, because I also know people who have done things and they're like, if I would have known all of the obstacles I had, I wouldn't have done this.
Right.
You know.
Facts.
So yeah, sometimes it is just flying. But, trying to make sure you're as educated and prepared financially, making sure you're stable enough to be able to do something. Now, Amy, let's get into this book, 13 Things Mentally Strong Couples Don't Do. And it was so interesting for me because there's quizzes in here, and I was taking some of them, and I'm clearly not perfect when it comes to reading this book. But I want to get into some of the things that you talked about in this book. Privacy.
What page is that? Because I don't have that one book.
That's in page 46.
Thank you.
Now, you talk about certain things that couples might agree should be kept private, and then secrets they wouldn't want to keep, want one another to keep. So let's talk about privacy and things that are okay to keep private, but then what do the secrets that you keep tell you about your relationship?
Well, there is a difference between secrecy and privacy. And it's tough sometimes to figure out, is that okay to not mention this? But the damaging secrets are when we do things like, I'm not going to tell you how much I spent on this because you'd be mad. Or I'm not going to tell you where I was this morning because you'll make a big deal out of it. And those are the things that damage the relationship. But privacy might be something like, I'm not going to let you look at my social media. I'm not going to give you my password. Or if my friend calls me with an emergency and says she needs to talk, I don't necessarily need to share that with my partner because that's something that's private.
Her private.
Right.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. Let's say you all went through something where he cheated and then you're like, I need your passwords. What do you do in a situation like that? Because now that's something that normally you should be able to have as privacy, but because you're trying to rebuild trust, is that an indication that this relationship may not be strong?
In some instances, that makes sense to say, all right, if you broke trust, then we're not going to keep those things private. So in our therapy office, we'll do that sometimes where somebody will say, okay, I'm going to let you look at my DMs. I'm going to let you check out my passwords so that you feel better. You know that when I say I'm going to be somewhere that you can trust me. And if you have to check up on me for a little while until we rebuild that trust, go for it.
Are you in a relationship?
I am.
Okay. Are you married?
I'm married, yep.
Okay. How long?
Good question. I know, you'd think as somebody that wrote the couples book, I would know. I would say. And the reason I say this, so I was married the first time and my husband passed away after 5 years. So when I got remarried, I was like, it doesn't matter how long you're married. I'm going for quality over quantity.
Yeah.
So I think it's been like 14 years.
I thought she was going to say 2.
And this is Steve.
Yeah, this is Steve.
Okay. All right, see? How does he feel? Like, how is it for him being married to somebody that implements these things? Because does he sometimes feel like, because I always think about like what it would be like to be married to somebody who's a therapist. Would they be analyzing things that I do or trying to tell me the right way to do things, or instead of, you should say it like this, you make me feel this way?
He's the coolest person, and he knows that although I'm a therapist, I'm also a human.
Yeah.
So he knows that yes, I know all of these things. However, I don't always do all the things that I say, and I don't try to psychoanalyze him or call him on, hey, that's the 7th thing mentally strong people don't do, Steve.
How annoying would that be?
Right? So
wait, what did you say? Let me write this down.
Exactly.
So I can put this in the book. Now, here's something also that I think is important. Practice asking for help and accepting it. All right? Because I'm never good at asking for help. But sometimes we don't ask for help, but we get mad when somebody doesn't help us. And it's also how you ask, too. So can we talk about that when it comes to relationships and not being like, you never do this or do this for me? Or
will you at least do this for me?
Yeah.
Right. Yeah, a lot of it has to do with the way we word it. Or we don't ask for help, but we expect our partners to know. So you start slamming stuff around in the kitchen, and you're like, oh, if only they'd recognize that I'm doing all the work out here.
You see me slamming this.
Right. or we could make a complaint, like, I have so much to do, instead of saying, could you please help me with this? So I think it's really important to look at how we express our concerns, whether we are asking for help, and then if somebody offers us help, to accept it, because sometimes we're like, you don't do it right, so I just will do it myself.
Right.
When somebody's trying to help us.
Yeah, because I definitely always will do the dishes, because I'll be like, because I wash the dishes before I put them in the dishwasher. Some people don't do that.
Right.
I only do that when I'm at your house.
Yeah, I don't play about that, because I think it's very nasty to put like dirty dishes, like very dirty dishes in the dishwasher.
See,
you aren't supposed to.
I don't use the dishwasher, so.
Yeah, I find that very odd.
I've always had one. Not always, but I mean, as an adult, I've always had a dishwasher. Never used it. But I mean, when I'm at her house, I'm very like particular about certain things, and I do feel like I'll just do it myself, because even like with laundry, I like to do my own laundry and do the laundry because I know that like
certain times, with my man, he may not read that it has to be air dry. Like you have to hang dry it.
Right.
Yeah. And some of your things are expensive. You don't want to just.
And I'd be like, oh my God, he washed the Gucci sweatpants. You know what I mean? And so, but I do try not to get angry about. I don't get angry, I feel like, but I can be very passive aggressive. Don't, Jasmine, what was that?
You can.
Okay. And that's something that I'm working on within myself. Because even like with reading this book, I'm like, oh, I do this, Like one thing I do that you talk about in this book is I'll be very quiet. Instead of addressing an issue, I just won't talk at all. And that's something that I know can be really frustrating for another person. Because my thing is, I don't want to argue, so I'd rather just not say anything.
I use the silent treatment when I'm angry. Yeah. That's on page 105.
Mm-hmm. You put that up for me?
Yes. And that's a pretty common thing where somebody will say, I'd rather just not talk about it. Although if we talked about it, maybe we could work through it. But on the other hand, it might get worse.
So uncomfortable when you talk about it, though.
And bringing things up. Mm-hmm. But when we don't work through the conflict, it usually grows bigger. The problem gets repeated again. And it's harder to solve those things if we don't sit and talk about it.
Yeah, I just can't talk about it right away.
Which makes sense. Yeah. Sometimes it's about giving yourself that space till your emotions come down.
Yeah, because I never want to say something like in the heat of an argument that I can't take back. I told that to Jasmine the other day.
You sure did.
She was very angry about something, and she was about to go in, and she let the word bitch fly a lot. And I was like, Jasmine, I don't think you should do this while you're mad.
Yeah, you said never respond while you're upset.
Yeah. I said, just wait a minute.
And I didn't.
Because a couple hours later, and then after that, she felt bad for the person.
I felt bad for the girl. Yeah, for the young lady
who came at you.
Yeah. And that's wise advice, is to say when you're really heated, don't do it in that moment. But what sometimes happens is with couples is somebody will say, I walked away because I was upset, and the other person chased me because they felt abandoned, or they felt like we have to rehash this right now. And then they end up in a blow up. But if you have that agreement of, I'm too upset to talk about it, but I will talk about it later, that makes things go a lot smoother usually.
Yeah. And I'll be very clear on, I'm not good at talking about things while I'm mad, but just give me a couple of hours. Because I know how I am. Mm-hmm. And I just never, like I said, I'm the type of person, I never want to say anything that I can't take back. Yeah. And say something while I'm mad, because words hurt.
That's it. Yeah, once you say it, you say it.
What's something that's been the hardest struggle for you when it comes to being in a relationship? Like, what would Steve say if he was reading this? Like, Amy, this is something that you kind of do sometimes.
Oh yeah, he would certainly be able to find plenty of mistakes that I make. One, I think, would probably be boundaries. I have an incredible ability to tolerate something for probably too long. Mm-hmm. And then when I decide I don't want to do this anymore,
you just cut it off.
Right. And then I think sometimes other people are like, wait, what? Because they're confused by that. So it's something I try to work on, is if you set the boundary first and then work on it instead of just putting the hammer down too fast.
That's how you talk about that with the boundaries. And you said it is at times okay to just cut things off. But the better thing, like you said, is to set those boundaries early.
Right. If somebody's annoying you, somebody keeps asking you to borrow money, somebody keeps showing up at your house unannounced, they keep doing things you don't like, make sure you speak up early.
No, you said borrow money. That hurt. I was like, oh, yeah, I do not want nobody calling it. My theory with borrowing money is a lot of times, if I lend somebody money, I automatically assume I probably won't get it back.
Yeah.
So that helps me. So I have to say, if I'm lending you this money, should I be okay with not getting it back? And then I also know you can't ever ask me for money again.
Right.
And so you borrow money from me. If I'm okay with just giving it to you, that's fine. But just know that's the last time you'll be able to ask me for money. And I already know that in my head.
And those are good policies to have, I think. As long as you know this is
I'm not sure if that's a good, okay, so that is a good policy.
I think so. And as long as you're comfortable with that and you set these rules for yourself ahead of time, and then you're not tempted to keep loaning money or giving money away if you're not comfortable with it.
And now we talked about secrecy versus privacy earlier, and I want to talk about things that why people keep secrets, because that was very interesting to me, right? Secrets to protect yourself. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we keep secrets because we don't want to hurt the other person.
Yep.
And that's something that you talk about as well. And there are some secrets that are really old that you're like, well, if it's something that may not ever come up again, why bring it up? Because you're really only hurting the other person. So let's just say early in the relationship, 5 years ago, you cheated. The person's never going to find out. And they ask you, have you ever cheated? Is that a secret that you're like, they'll never find this out, I should not tell? Or is that something, well, they asked me directly, I should be honest and tell?
So it kind of comes down to what somebody's values are. So it might be, I'm going to keep this secret. It's not going to happen again. It's not going to hurt the other person, so I'm not going to tell. There are people that come to that conclusion. They can live with it. They're comfortable with it. Other people who say, the guilt will eat me up forever if I lie to this person straight up. So I'm going to tell you what happened, but I'll give you the whole story. I'm not just going to give you a half truth, because that's what happens more often than not. So I'm like, well, here's what happened. They don't tell the whole story. If you're going to be honest, tell the whole story.
Tell the whole thing.
So there's no black and white answer to that.
There isn't. I think it's really up to people to decide, because sometimes somebody will be like, something happened 10 years ago, very early on in our relationship. If I bring that up now and I tell that to you, like, why am I doing it? Am I just trying to clear my conscience? Are we working through something? Does it make sense to talk about it? So I think it's really important to think about the why.
What about if you guys have a kid together, but it may not be his?
Oh my gosh.
Now, and it's already, let's just say the kid is 15. Is that a time where you should be like, I want to confess? Like, there is a possibility. What would you tell somebody if they were sitting in the chair? I mean, it happens.
It does. I get people in my therapy office that this will happen. That will probably come to light at some point. If that's not somebody's child, through a doctor's visit, it's something
illness,
something down the road, it might come to light. So you may be the one who says, I'm going to tell you before somebody else does.
You know what I find interesting? There's people that may know things that the other person has kept from them, but they also won't bring it up.
Right.
What is that about? Like, say you're the person who you find out that's not your child, but you're not going to say anything to your significant other, and you'll just keep on living life, but you might have some resentment, in that situation. But people do that. People know things about their significant other, but don't say anything.
Often it's about keeping the peace. And that happens often, too, in the therapy office. Somebody will be like, my partner goes on a lot of business trips. I know what's going on, but I'm not going to say anything, because then we would either
argue,
right?
and
We'd have
maybe
to
break
confront
up.
it, work through it, or do something differently. But if I just don't say anything, we could keep the peace.
Ooh, I can't imagine. Because no matter what, you're still going to feel away.
Yeah.
And how do you operate like that? Do you see that people have a lot more non-traditional relationships now?
Definitely. Yeah. Over the years, I would say it's been 20 years since I've been a therapist, and things have definitely become less traditional over time.
Why do you think that is?
I think people are just opening their eyes to realizing that relationships aren't as cut and dry as we used to think they were, right? And people are like, actually, there's some different things we could do here, and I think people are more accepting of it now too.
One of my favorite out of all the lists that you have is they don't expect the relationship to meet all their needs, and I think for a long time I thought, not that there was a perfect guy, but I thought, the person that was my person was going to kind of meet all my needs. And I realized that a while ago, or a few years ago, like, there's no person that can meet all my needs. Like, I have friendships, I have relationships with my girlfriends, and he can't be those things to me. And I think that's something a lot of women not a lot of women struggle with, but some women struggle with that. Like, thinking a guy is going to meet all their needs when it's impossible.
And we get this message from every romantic comedy, from a lot of music, things like that when you meet that person, it will just take away all
There's like birds flying and chirping.
Yeah.
And they get it all right. They check all the lists, and then they can,
And then when people have those expectations, they get in a relationship and they think, but I'm still kind of lonely, or I'm still struggling with certain things in life. And then why aren't I happy with you?
When do you know it's time to give up? Because one thing that you said early on in the book is also you just may not be meant to be with that person, and you don't have to stay together. Sometimes people feel like marriage is a forever thing, and there are people that really feel like that for whatever reason, and so no matter what happens, we have to stay together. But have you ever had to tell people, y'all just may not be good together, or is it always trying to work it out and figure out how can we fix this?
You got a list for that too. You got a quiz for that.
I do, because sometimes people come in and they really don't like each other, but for whatever reason, and neither one really wants to say, what could I do differently? They come in and they say, I want you to change my partner so that my life isn't so bad. If my partner just didn't do this thing, or if my partner acted differently, I'd be happier. And so then we talk about, if your partner's not going to change, is this what you want to put up with for the rest of your life? Or do you want to do something different? Because I don't have any magic wands to make the other person change. And so some couples decide, we don't really like each other, but it's easier. It might be financial, or there might be other reasons why they stay together. But some couples are like, actually, this isn't working for us.
Yeah, we had to come here and figure that out.
Right.
Now, listen to this. 36% of people say their partners are sometimes rude, condescending, or disrespectful. Right? And so a lot of times when we're not in a situation, we're like, how could somebody deal with that? Until you find yourself in a situation dealing with that. And there is a quiz here to talk about how many of these seem like you. I roll my eyes at my partner.
Who doesn't roll their eyes sometimes at their partner? Don't we all sometimes?
do I do that? I don't know. If I do, it's a joke. Like, I'll do it for him to see it, and he'll be like, oh, my God, what's wrong with you? But I do. Okay, I say mean things to my partner.
Why are you looking at me?
I'm looking at you to see, do you?
I don't have a partner, so.
But
no,
okay.
No, I don't.
I call my partner names, so you don't do that. I make disparaging remarks about them. We discussed this the other day when one woman said she was dating a guy, and he would tell her she's a cheeseburger away from being fat.
Oh my gosh.
I mean, that's an awful thing to say to somebody. But let me ask you this though: if you do feel like somebody has, because this does happen, right? Somebody looks way different than they did when you guys first got together. They put on a lot of weight. They're not making the effort to really do anything about it. They're not eating right. They're not going to the gym. But you still love this person. How do you address something like that?
So what we don't want to do is lecture. You don't nag somebody. If you tell them all of these things, it's not going to work. So in the book, there's a section where I talk about wishes and dips and other people's motivation. So if you have a partner who doesn't take care of themselves, but maybe someday they're like, I wish I had more energy, they're giving you a signal like, oh, that's great. That's a door that you can open then and say, what do you think would help you have more energy? Or somebody says, oh, my pants don't fit me anymore. Oh, let's have a conversation about that. But wait for them to bring it up. You don't have to point it out. Like, they know.
Yeah, they're aware.
Yeah,
right.
That's true.
Sometimes I'll be wondering if people are aware, though, of certain things.
Some people be like, why you didn't tell me I was getting this big?
Yeah, and you're like, I didn't know how to.
Thought you saw.
All right, here's some other things. I share embarrassing things about them in front of others, even though I know it bothers them.
Oh.
Yeah, that's really nasty. I use sarcasm with my partner often. I raise my voice sometimes. I use a disrespectful tone of voice. These are all indications. This is disrespectful communication. And so I think it is something that you do have to make a conscious effort when you find yourself like saying and doing certain things and being respectful of somebody else's feelings, but also making sure that they're respectful of yours. If somebody's doing this to you, right, how do you address this with them?
And that would go back to the boundaries where you can speak up and say, I saw when I mentioned I was going to my mom's house, you rolled your eyes. Point it out. Like, hey, I'm acknowledging what I just saw and call them out on it. And then make it clear, too, like, I'm not going to tolerate it. If we're having a conversation and you say something disrespectful, we're going to end the conversation. Doesn't mean I'm going to not come back to it. We are, but we're going to come back to it when you're calmer and you can be polite.
You also did a TED Talk that's like one of the most watched TED Talks ever. And I want to ask you, what do you think, what do you owe all this popularity to because you did this list just kind of because of what you were going through for yourself when you did this list of the 13 things that mentally strong people don't do. You did this TED Talk. How many views did it get?
23 million.
23 million views. Make sure you watch this TED Talk too. But I know you couldn't have anticipated this happening. What do you think is the reason that people are so drawn to this conversation?
Nobody taught us about mental strength. People are really interested in learning, well, how do you become mentally stronger? These little skills can make a huge difference, but nobody knows. They don't teach us in school. Our parents didn't teach us. So I think people really want to know, like, how can I have a healthier mindset? What would help me have healthier relationships? How do I deal with sad feelings? So I believe right now the world is just ready to hear that message, and people want to know, how do I dive into this? Because it makes the rest of your life better when you're mentally stronger.
And I'm sure COVID also affected a lot of that too. We've seen a lot of things changing. And for you as a therapist, have you seen a lot of people coming in with different types of issues than you've seen before?
Yeah, and I think it really opened the door to people realizing that we're all just a few things away from having a mental health issue. There used to be that stigma of like, oh, you're broken. If you're struggling with depression, you should pull yourself out of it. And if anything good came out of COVID, it's that idea that take away a few of our favorite coping skills. Like, you can't go to the gym, you can't see your family as often. And so many more people were like, yeah, I'm struggling with depression and anxiety too. And I think that really helped people realize that, yeah, there's skills and strategies and things we can do to manage our mental health, and we should be doing that proactively.
Yeah, I think, and this is a chapter too about how addressing your problems actually helps you grow stronger. So those are some really important things to do when you can identify that and know how to deal with it. That has been something that I think it's all a journey. Even for me, like every day I'm trying to figure out ways that I can do things better, say things better, be stronger mentally. What do you tell somebody who, because the workplace has changed too. And so some people have jobs that they know they have to keep because they have to pay the bills, but they hate going to work. And I had to realize I had a job previously. Every day I would wake up and be like, should I call out sick today? And it was really, really tough for me. And I hated that I felt that way. And I remember I ended up getting fired from it anyway, but, some things happened. But I had to also change my mindset as far as waking up in the morning and going to work and realizing that, like, this is an opportunity for some great things to happen. Just, feeling blessed to get up and get out of bed in the morning. What do you tell people who are hating their jobs, feeling like they wake up in the morning like, I hate my life? I don't want to do this anymore. I don't make enough money. I hate what I do. I hate my boss. I hate my coworkers. What are some things that they can do to become stronger?
Yeah, life's short. And so if there's something you can do to switch jobs or do something different, do it. But it's not always feasible. Sometimes people have to stay in the job they have. So if that's the case, look for as many positive things as you can. I don't care if the only thing you have to look forward to during the workday is lunch, but make sure that you say, hey, I'm going to go eat with a friend today. I'm going to go do something enjoyable. Look for those little nuggets of things that you do enjoy. Otherwise, once you come to that conclusion, I hate my job, your brain will only look for all the things that you hate about it.
Right.
So you have to be proactive about saying, here's 3 good things I'm looking forward to today. At the end of the day, you might go through and say, here are 5 good things that happened today. And just be proactive about reminding yourself that there's good parts to it too.
All right. I just asked that because I know there are so many people that struggle with that right now.
It's pretty common, I feel like.
Yeah. Well, Amy, thank you so much for joining us. I know that this has been a long time coming for you to come up here and sit down and kind of talk about how we can be more mentally strong individually and as a couple. Because I feel like you have to be a mentally strong individual to be in a successful relationship too.
Exactly. And so when I interviewed people about the book and surveyed people, they said, 86% of them said, I want to strengthen my relationship. And I think the key to strengthening my relationship is growing stronger.
Right. And one of the keys to strengthen yourself is to not worry about pleasing others.
Yep.
And a lot of times there are people who are people pleasers out there that feel, and there's no way you're ever going to please everybody.
Exactly.
So we have to keep that in mind. Well, thank you so much for coming through. I appreciate you for taking the time for us. Again, it's 13 things mentally strong couples don't do. And there's definitely some quizzes in here. This, I think, is something great that you could sit down with your significant other with.
And like actually, a workbook, right?
Yeah, and there's certain things that you guys can talk about. Maybe it's hard for you to address. This book can address it for you,
I hope so.
Yeah, I hope so too. Because I want to see it. If I feel like people always, the way that things have changed as far as marriage and relationships, and I feel like social media gives us so much access where you feel like things are so much better outside of what you have going on. And then on the flip side, there's people who act like their relationship is perfect on social media, but in real life it's not.
It's trash.
And we have these really unrealistic expectations, But where can people find you also, Amy, just so we know? Thank you, Dan.
My website is Amy Morin, LCSW, as in licensed clinical social worker.com. And you can find my TED Talk and information about my books and my podcast, Mentally Stronger, with therapist Amy Morin.
All right. She's a real expert, guys. Don't just take it from us. It's way up. Amy Morin, thank you so much.
Thank you.